مساء الخير جميعا. سنبدأ بالبند 7.2.2 معايير تحديد مواقع المكاتب الإقليمية وتوفير الموارد لها. وهنا أود أن أبلغكم جميعا أن الغرض من هذه الوثيقة هو إجراء مراجعة شاملة للمكاتب والهياكل الإقليمية للمنظمة العالمية للأرصاد الجوية، وذلك لتعزيز كفاءتها وفاعليتها. الآن أدعو مدير إدارة خدمات الأعضاء والتنمية السيد فيليبي لوسيو إلى تقديم مسودة التوصية 7.2.2/1. تفضل سيدي.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm presenting on behalf of the first Vice President, who was the chair of the task force, but unfortunately cannot be with us today. And as justification for this work, the justification emanates from Resolution 40 of EC 76, which defined the roles, responsibilities, and operations of regional offices, and requested the Executive Task Force to develop a criteria for the location of regional offices in strategic locations, and also develop a proposal for potential basic structure for the functioning of the regional office. Next slide, please. In terms of criteria for the strategic location of the regional offices, the criteria has two components. The first component is a strategic and policy level criteria which measures the suitability of a location for achieving the broader organizational goals of the organization. In here, we have two elements, starting with the strategic positioning and collaboration, and secondly, affordability. On the other hand, we also have technical elements of the criteria. Next slide, please. Where we see technical criteria measuring the operational capabilities that would allow the regional offices to function economically, efficiently, and effectively. Here we have 4 elements: accessibility and infrastructure, cost efficiency and sustainability of operations, security, safety, and quality of working and living environment, and finally, regional representation. Next slide. The second part of the task force's work was to develop a basic structure for the effective and efficient functioning of the regional offices. To arrive at this basic structure, the current positions in the regional offices were reviewed and matched against the functions contained in the role, responsibilities, and operations of the regional offices, which allowed the detection of areas where these functions were not being effectively implemented. And as a result, the structure is being proposed, which in essence is a structure which we already have, but also includes 2 new positions, one of a project design officer, intended to facilitate the design of projects in the regions, tapping into funding resources available in the region, but also supporting members in the region to design projects, and therefore enabling greater access of members to climate funding. And secondly, facilitate implementation of projects in the region. And the second position we advocate for is that of a project capacity development officer, basically intended to facilitate all the capacity development activities, tapping into those capabilities available in the regions in terms of centers, but also leveraging different training facilities and activities carried out by partners, by members and other entities, and also make effective use of our training capabilities within the Secretariat. And finally, we have a position which is a management officer, which in the most part is a conversion of our already existing position of a project manager into a management officer to facilitate support mostly to the regional association's work, but also the work of the director of the regional office. Next slide. This proposal does not carry any financial request for the budget 2026-2027. There is an estimated cost of about 1.9 million for the implementation of this new proposal. But this will only be possible after the resources have been identified for implementation. We also consider a one-time cost, for example, for relocation of offices, which will be determined once we know where potential office can be relocated. But more specifically about the current proposal, we are saying that implementation would only begin once funding is identified, and there are different ways of funding the structures we are proposing. Firstly, we rely and would be increasing our relationship with our host government to see the type of support we could get from these members. And I'd like to thank the governments of Nigeria, for example, and the government of Singapore, who have provided tremendous support in terms of staffing for the operation of the regional offices. But also, we would rely on extra budgetary resources through projects to facilitate implementation of activities in the regions, and eventually efficiencies which could come from reprioritization of activities as we go into the exercise of reprioritizing activities. And eventually, if any additional funding requirements are needed, and we have resources to support that, eventually that would be taken for the consideration of members through either IEC or Congress. Next slide, please. So the request for this from this document is what we have here. First, to agree on the implementation of the basic structure for the effective functioning of the regional offices, to adopt the criteria for the location of regional offices, to optimize the efficiency and effectiveness in fulfilling member needs, but also taking into account the current financial situation and the process we are undergoing of reprioritizing activities, postpone any recommendations to its 12th session, particularly to make sure that if we need resources for implementation after we've exhausted the other different mechanisms of funding this proposal, we could take that request to the 12th session, which would have taken into account not only the financial situation, but also the external evaluation of the constituent body, which is going to be undertaken. Since this document was developed, uploaded the work in progress version 2, we've had comments received from Japan, and we would want those who are reflected in the whips, and we would invite Japan eventually to present the amendments they propose to the document. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
شكرا سيد فيليبي. والآن المجال مفتوح لملاحظاتكم. تفضل. لينو، دكتورة لينو، تفضلي.
Very much, President, Mr. President, and Felipe for the presentation. We know very well that the role of the regional offices is to support the regional offices and regional association in the WMO action plan and taking into account with the budget allocated. But with the proposal also to assure to define technical and management function to focus better support members will be needed to agree together how we could resolve this, because understaff management of the regional office could affect the activity and operational plan at the level of each region. Development, coordination, and the implementation of the WMO strategic and operating plan for the next period could be affected if the regional office cannot have staff sufficient to cover, especially when you propose as a basic structure project design officer and capacity development officer. what happened after 2027? We could be in the same situation out of the budget allocated for this. Thank you so much.
شكرا سيدتي. فيليبي.
Thank you, President of RA6. Certainly, understaffing is a major concern for the operation of the regional offices. And you, as a president of Regional Association 6, are very aware of the fact that the Office for Europe is the one least staffed. And therefore, one of the objectives of this proposal for basic structure is to address the disparity in terms of staffing of regional offices, because we have cases where the Regional Office of Europe has 4 staff against other offices which have more than 10 staff. So that would enable the office to be provided with the resources needed to effectively and efficiently implement the functions which are required, but also make sure that the type of work which is delivered in each of the regions is quite similar. So we don't want any region to be left behind. We do understand that there are issues around budget, but for now, priorities being given to those mechanisms which would allow us to staff the office without making immediate resource to regular budget resources. Thank you.
شكرا. دكتورة لينا. أوكي.
It's okay for me here.
ديفيد. تفضل ديفيد.
Thank you, Mr. President. This proposal is quite acceptable to us because looking at the region and looking at, if I could give KMD as an example, we've had this office within the premises of the National Meteorological Service. And we also have an experience of how it feels when the office is outside. So we are in support of this consideration. And if I could mention, I have something I've prepared which I would like to submit to the Secretariat later on. But we are talking about basically the whole issue of strengthening the NMHS, the issue of enhanced synergy and programmatic collaboration, especially now that we are talking about the importance of enhancing visibility of WMO and all that we stand for, the ability to work on current running projects together, leveraging on the leadership and even the whole issue of infrastructure. And here we are also looking at how easy it has been to launch the National Framework for Climate Services. And I would like to report that WMO, the local office, they operated as though they were already living with us. It was quite extraordinary, and we are forever grateful for that. So how much more it would be if they were just co-located as was in the beginning. Fostering a hub for regional climate action, this is one of the things that we foresee happening. And in this age when we are talking about early warning for all, this would improve our delivery on this particular matter. I want to stop there because, as I have promised, I have the document which I'm ready to submit. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
شكرا ديفيد. لوكو.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good afternoon, everyone. Indeed, the functioning of array offices is key to the delivery of products, top-down in terms of policy and initiatives, and bottom-up in terms of problems and common issues to deal with. And taking into consideration the answer given by Mr. Philippe to the President RA6, I look positively ahead to this document because indeed all criteria have been met according to the requests from the floor. I participated personally to the task force. And I do believe, yes, the problem of manning should be dealt with with caution, taking in mind that the fact of being co-located with other UN headquarters elsewhere or here in Geneva should not penalize the manning of the office, the regional association office. And we should not go below the minimum manning, which is needed to deliver, to play as the intermediate level between the headquarters and the NHMS. Thank you.
شكرا سيدي. السيد فيليبي ممكن أي تعليق على
Thank you,
Statement.
Mr. President. Basically, we welcome the comments made by Mr. Bayoni. We recognize that there are issues in terms of staffing of regional offices which need to be addressed. And this proposal offers us that opportunity to enhance the staffing of the regional office, particularly the one in Europe, which we have the greatest shortages in terms of human resources.
شكرا لك سيد ديفيد. ملاحظاتك مع فيليبو.
Apparently, he has nothing to say to me. No comment.
تفضل.
Apologies, Dr. Gikungu. We also welcome your contributions. Thank you very much. And we took note of the importance and the location of regional offices in a country, recognizing the experiences of Kenya. So apologies for having overlooked. Didn't mean to not consider you. Thank you.
سيد فهدني.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I think it is well said. I need to support the idea reflected by the President of RA6 and also my colleagues from Italy. So empowering the regional office is very important to decentralize some activities at a national level and to give fruitful supports for the visibility of med services at the national level. So the support from member countries is very important to get full support in the visibility of national meteorological and hydrological services. So to do that, I think it is better to consider the staff number and some doing according to the structure. So that is very important issues just to support what already said by others. Thank you very much.
شكرا لك سيدي. اوكي.
Could we ask colleagues to show the whip so that we could go through the comments which were made? If we could start from the top of the document, I just want to explain how the changes were made. We received the first amendments proposal from the President of Regional Association 1, who requested that the recommendation to Congress be changed to become a resolution of the Executive Council, so that Executive Council could take this decision. And this was taking into account the fact that for the next extraordinary Congress, there could possibly be a need of reprioritizing the items which are going to be discussed, and therefore we would want to use this opportunity to decide on this particular matter. Moving forward, so we basically changed from recommendation to decision, and we deleted all the background information which was provided in the document. We remained with the resolution and the title of the resolution. Next. Next, keep going down. So instead of having a recommendation, we now have a resolution, which starts with noting, remains the same. Next. Acknowledging, remains the same. Keep going. In recognizing, excuse me, if you stop there. In recognizing, there was a proposal by Japan, which changed the word basic to optimal. And then Japan also made additions at the end of one of recognizing, adding responding specific regional needs. In recognizing, there were a few edits proposed by Japan, as they can be seen. Moving forward, in expressing appreciation, the President of Regional Association 1 had suggested, instead of using the Executive Council related to some text, by appreciating the work of the task force on the comprehensive review of the WMO regional concept and approaches, and then the rest follows. The President of RA1 also added under number 3 the word members in place of countries. Moving forward, President of RA1 added considering also and considering further. And the decision as proposed by the President of RA1 and amended by Mr. Namura from Japan would now read as shown. Number 2, we changed adopt to note, proposal from Mr. Namura on the RA1's president. And then President of RA1 proposed postponing any related recommendations to the 12th session of the Congress in 2027 to reflect the evolution of financial situation and the results of the external evaluation. There were a few edits to the request to the Secretary General. For sake of consistency, basic is changed to optimal. And then we reflect to respond to the regional specific needs as proposed earlier by Mr. Namura. And the Secretariat, because the potential costs of relocation may not be known today, because we don't know where the office could, for example, be relocated, to develop an approach for funding any costing implications, and the rest follows. And then the 4th, to inform the Executive Council on the implementation of these decisions, and also in light of the evolution of the financial situation. And that basically concludes the type of comments we had from the President of Regional Association 1, but also from Mr. Kimura from Japan.
شكرا فيليبي. أي ملاحظات على الوثيقة؟ سيد نمورة تفضل.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to express my sincere appreciation to everyone involved in developing this important resolution. I overall agree with and support the importance and the direction of strengthening the functions of regional offices. Please allow me to make a couple of comments in relation to an amendment proposal. Firstly, issues and priorities differ from one region to another. Therefore, the optimal structure of each regional office should differ according to the region. From the perspective of efficiency and effectiveness, it would therefore make sense to design the most optimized structure for each regional office, responding to its specific regional needs. The proposed basic structure of the regional office could serve as a useful reference. Secondly, the criteria for the location of the regional offices are presented in an INF document. If the EC session is to adopt the criteria, it should be provided as an annex for consideration by EC. Therefore, I would suggest to replace adopt by note in desired paragraph bracket 2. Thank you, President.
شكرا لك. ممكن تغيير
Thank you, Mr. President, and for Mr. Namura. We are quite flexible. We could transform the INF into an annex. The only challenge we would have is that we wouldn't have it available in all languages because the INF is not translated. That would be the only challenge. But if members of EC would agree, we could have it available when the report of the session is shared. Alternatively, we could also live with the note as proposed by Mr. Namura.
تفضل سيد نمورة.
Thank you, Mr. President. So regarding page 6 decides bracket 2. So I understand what you said. So note with appreciation is okay. Thank you.
شكرا لك. سيد تازو.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, de me donner la parole. Je voudrais, au regard des propositions de modification qui ont été lues tout à l'heure, associer ma voix à celle du président du Conseil régional 1 pour supporter l'idée de soumettre au Congrès une résolution. Et à la suite de l'intervention du précédent intervenant, du précédent membre, je voudrais également relever le fait que les besoins seront évolutifs au niveau du Conseil régional et que la meilleure approche de prendre en considération toutes ces évolutions-là, c'est de pratiquer les règles d'équité et non d'égalité, donc de tenir compte des membres ou des régions qui ont beaucoup plus besoin d'assistance et satisfaire cette demande-là. Je vous remercie.
شكرا سيدي تومسون.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I accept the view of the Executive Council, of course, to review our procedures, to review how we operate. I think under the whole reform of the organization, this must always be considered, that we take a look at what we are doing and ensure that we're doing it in the best way possible and look at these possibilities. So I accept this document in that context. I, however, find that it speaks a lot about the inefficiencies and what needs to change, but it does not really address the areas in which we are satisfied, or things that we consider to be existing arrangements that are successful, which I think should be considered in some strength. So I would like to suggest that we're in particular that paragraph that speaks about requests the presidents of regional associations to continue collaborating with the Secretariat with a view, let me see, are we at that page? Right after, yes. Right, yes. Request the presidents of regional associations to continue collaborating with the Secretariat with a view to advising on, I would like to insert the successes of existing arrangements as well as emerging challenges and opportunities as is there. Because I think we also need to recognize some of the positives that are occurring in the existing arrangements.
Could I ask? Thank you.
The successes of existing arrangements as well as. That's right. Thank you. One other point is that it speaks generally about regional offices. It does not often refer as well to representative offices, although I believe maybe it's being considered as a part of. Okay, thank you.
شكرا سيد تومسون. أي إضافات على الوثيقة؟ سيد فاتني.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. President, for opportunity and the Secretariat for this. And I can clarify the reason behind this proposal. It is noted that the current financial challenges we face have forced the Secretariat to take various measures to increase the resilience of the organization and ensure liquidity in the focus on key priorities. Some of these measures are related with prioritizing the discussion of agenda items during the extraordinary Congress in October, so that more time can be devoted to discussing priorities in view of the financial challenges. So the proposal I made was to enable consideration of the current financial situation in the document and allow EC to take decision instead of making recommendation to the extraordinary Congress, which might need to focus on discussion priorities. As a president of RA1 Regional Association, the regional reform is very important to our work, and we would like to see the regional offices strengthened and of course within the resources which we have. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
شكرا سيدي. هل عندك أي تغيير في الوثيقة أو إضافة؟
No, just support the previous one.
شكرا لك شكرا لك. سيد ديفيد، عندك أي تغيير أو تعديل في الوثيقة.
Mr. President, thank you once again. I'll just submit what I have, and I can discuss with the Secretariat later on, if that's acceptable.
Be good if you
Thank
could
you.
read out. Mr. Dr. Gikungu, would it be possible to read out so that we could reflect the text in the document for possible approval?
Yes, it is possible. Thank you. We're talking about strengthening the national meteorological and hydrological services. We recognize that a core mandate of WMO is to support the capacity of its member states. Being co-located with the department, a leading meteorological service in the RA1 region would allow the WMO to provide more direct and tailored support to members in the region. This includes hands-on training, technical assistance, and the transfer of new technologies and methodologies, including WIS2, ultimately strengthening KMD or the department and serving as a model for other services, NMHSs in the RA1 sub-region. Number two, enhanced synergy and programmatic collaboration by physically embedding the WMO sub-regional office within the department. Both organizations can foster a more seamless and integrated approach to developing and implementing meteorological and climatological programs. We think this proximity will facilitate daily interaction, joint planning, and co-creation of projects that are better aligned with the specific needs and priorities of the Eastern and Southern Africa region. Co-locating with the WMO sub-regional office within the department also facilitates and fosters much closer day-to-day collaboration and operational synergies, including but not limited to being the National Meteorological and Hydrological Service and a WMO Regional Instrument Center with the acronym RIC, and Regional WIGOS Center for East Africa. Currently, KMD hosts and participates in several WMO sub-regional projects, for example, CRUISE East Africa, WISA, and CLIMSA. Being physically embedded within the department would allow the WMO office to directly engage with the experts within the department, work together on the data, infrastructure, and ongoing regional activities. Leveraging the department's leadership and infrastructure, we see that the department has demonstrated significant leadership in the region, notably through the recent launch of its national framework for climate services. The department also hosts the recognized Regional Training Center, RTC, and the Institute for Meteorological Training and Research. The relocation allows the WMO to leverage these existing world-class facilities and KMD's established infrastructure for regional workshops, training programs, and research initiatives, leading to greater cost effectiveness and impact. cost effectiveness and resource optimization. This is another bullet. While UNON provides excellent facilities, operating within a dedicated National Meteorological Service facilities could potentially lead to WMO cost savings and efficiencies. Shared utilities, ICT infrastructure, security, and administrative support services within KMD would reduce overheads for the WMO sub-regional office, and furthermore, by being closer to the operational core meteorology in Kenya, the WMO office could optimize its resources by more effectively targeting support and initiatives where they are most needed and can have the greatest impact, in our view. Next, fostering a hub for regional climate action. The presence of the WMO sub-regional office at the KMD headquarters is poised to transform the location into a vibrant hub for climate action and innovation in Eastern and Southern Africa. This will attract a confluence of regional and international experts, researchers, and policymakers, fostering a dynamic environment for knowledge exchange, collaborative research, and the development of cutting-edge climate solutions. On early warning for all, the United Nations Early Warning for All initiative is a top priority for WMO. The direct operational link with KMD will streamline the process of disseminating timely and accurate weather and climate information. This close partnership is crucial for enhancing the effectiveness of early warning systems, from forecasting extreme events to ensuring the warnings reach the most vulnerable communities in a clear and actionable format. Lastly, optimizing resource utilization and a one United Nations approach. While the UNON provides essential administrative support, co-locating with the primary operational partner in meteorology offers a more specialized and efficient use of resources. This move aligns with the broader Delivering as One United Nations reform agenda, which encourages greater coherence, effectiveness, and efficiency in UN operations by leveraging the strengths of national partners such as the Kenya Meteorological Department. The WMO's presence at KMD would be a testament to this principle, focusing on a results-oriented partnership to achieve shared climate goals. Thank you, Mr. President.
شكرا سيد ديفيد. هل تريد منا أن نضع كل اللي قلته في الدوكيمنت؟
I can summarize it.
اي نعم، ممكن مع السكرتارية
Yeah.
يختصر ويوضع في نعم. شكرا لك.
That's fine.
شكرا.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
إذن هل في أي إضافة على قبل أن نعتمد هذه مسودة التوصية؟ ألبرت.
Oh, thank you so much, Mr. President. I just wanted to ask if you will be able to see the decisions in this document before we continue for the approval. Thank you.
Philip.
Could I ask colleagues to scroll down the document? Further down, towards the end. further down. Sorry, so exactly here. Up. These are the three decisions which the Executive Council is requested to take. The sides 1, the sides 2, and the sides 3.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'm not sure if I understood correctly, but is there additional text that's going to be added to the document based on the last round of comments? And if that's the case, would it be possible to see it before we finally approve the document, please?
نعم. أنا سيكي سيدنا سيكي تفضل.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to voice my support to this effort and use this opportunity to make some few suggestions. I think that introducing strategic planning at the regional level may allow for better continuous assessment of the performance of the regional offices. And I think that one of the critical issues that we're having is coordination and communication. As SG pontificated earlier, that action without coordination is not effective. So I think if we can bring down strategic planning at a regional level, it will enhance the coordination and collaboration. Thank you.
شكرا. تفضل.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je reprends la parole juste pour dire que il y a un groupe qui a été mis en place. Ce groupe-là a fait un excellent travail que je voudrais féliciter. Et dans les commentaires, nous allons plus en détail et qu'il faudrait faire attention parce que certains des commentaires que nous voulons faire des ajouts de texte ont certainement été déjà pris dans des critères que ce groupe de travail-là a produits. Donc, avant tout ajout, rassurons-nous que on ne rappelle pas ce qui est déjà inclus dans les critères qui ont été proposés par ce groupe. Merci.
شكرا لك سيدي. هشام.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Just reading the text, Mr. President, my recommendation would be that we accept the text as it is and not make any additions. If you read it, the decisions are quite clear on the need to design, etc. So, and what I heard my learned colleague talking to was the actual implementation. And I think that would be taking this document a step too far. So we're outlining here what needs to be done. I think that was already implementing. So my recommendation would be that we not add additional text and that we accept the decision as it stands. Thank you, Chair.
شكرا لك سيدي. إذن قبل اعتماد الوثيقة هل القرارات تكتفون بالقرارات أو نضيف قرار آخر يتماشى مع الجميع؟ ألبرت تفضل.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mr. President. Yes, I would like to delete one of those decisions because it's actually not a decision. It is a noting. So the decision number 2, I don't know if it's possible to decide to note with appreciation. Is that correct that we have to have it there, or do we have to put it in just in a noting paragraph. So that's why I wanted to highlight the decision part, so we will be able to take a decision, but not, maybe we have to reward decides number 2. But if we are going to note with appreciation, I think it should be put in a note and paragraph. If that's not the case, please explain me a little bit more about the procedure. Thank you so much.
شكرا لك. Philippi.
Thank you, Albert. I think I see what you mean here. And I would only ask our colleagues from Japan, Mr. Namura, if you would be happy to just have note the criteria and delete appreciation.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree the idea is to move to the note. Yes, thank you.
شكرا سيد نامورا. شكرا. إذا يعدل القرار.
If they relocate in October, you will go. It's something already in October. We had.
Albert, yes, تفضل. مكان.
Oh, yes, thank you. And thank you also for the colleague. Yes, I understand the point. It should be stay in the resolution, but not as a decision, because I don't see that we as EC will decide to note. So that's why I would like to request to put it in a noting paragraph way before the decide, because in the decision is we have to have some action in the decision paragraphs. So if we are only noting that a document has been produced, should not be in the decide that we are going to note. I don't know if we would be able to explain it more than that. Thank you.
Thank you, Albert. I think it's clear. We will move it up so that it's in the noting part and not in the decide part.
شكرا. شكرا. دكتور لينا.
Thank you so much. Maybe we could change to note to establish the criteria for the location of the regional office, because without criteria, we cannot establish nothing. At least during this meeting, we could think to establish the criteria that already was presented in the task force group. I don't know.
Originally, the text was calling for an adoption of these criteria. Japan raised the concern that if we adopt the INF document, would have to be part of the document as an annex to the resolution. Perhaps this is the reason why we are, and as I had proposed earlier, we could possibly go with the adoption of the criteria. And these criteria, we would have it immediately available in all the languages, because at the moment the INF document is not translated in all the languages. But if we're adopting, we are not going to review the document now. We adopt the document, and then the document will be made available. The criteria will be made available in all the languages. If Japan would agree to that, just to address the concerns raised by Albert, by the president of RA6, and to allow us to move forward, perhaps we would stick to the original text, which is adopt, and we would have the INF document transformed into an annex, so that when the document is published, it is available to everyone in all the languages, because the INF documents normally are not part of the report of the session. Would that be agreeable to Mr. Namura?
Thank you. So, yeah, I understand your concern that, yeah, so, yeah, if the session wants to adopt the criteria, would you mind if just, attach the proposed criteria as a next, and so that we can review it? Is it possible? During the session, we can do that.
Why don't you?
Short break. Short break. I think. No, take a coffee break and then
Yes, yes.
short break. We'll discuss. نظرا للاحتياج لمناقشات اليابان، تفضل اليابان.
Thank you, Mr. President. We basically very much flexible how to proceed, but one of the possible ways is to just changing changing back from the resolution to the recommendations, so that we can discuss at the next extraordinary Congress. Then you may be able to have a time to translate the criteria in all languages.
إذا نظرا لاحتياج وقت للمناقشات ممكن ناخذ استراحة شاي حتى السكرتارية تراجع كيفية قانونية النص هذا. تفضلوا الاستراحة.
Singapore. In Singapore.
تفضل سقفورة.
Yeah, I don't know if it will help to move things forward a little bit, but I noticed that in the section on request the Secretary General, there is already a request for the Secretary General to consider the criteria anyway. So whether or not the EC decides to adopt, consequentially, the Secretary General will consider the criteria. So perhaps we can leave the Japanese proposal to move it up to noting, because the criteria will be considered anyway.
شكرا لك سيدتي. ناخذ استراحة شاي حتى مناقشة البند في السكرتارية. مرحبا بكم مرة ثانية. أود أن أعير انتباه الجميع بأنه كان مطلوب من فريق العمل أن يصمم مقترح مبدئي، وبهذا أترك المجال السيد فيليبي. تفضل سيد فيليبي.
Thank you, Mr. President. Based on the discussions we had earlier on, we tried to formulate the part which was under the sides by first recognizing the need to design an optimal structure in consideration of the basic structure as presented in INFA 7.2. And the point which was raised by Albert, we take note of the criteria. So that takes note is the action which is taken now. And then we postpone. Here, I'd like to request the replacement of the word related to eventual, because related presumes there are already recommendations which are going to be put forward, but there may not be recommendations. So having eventual, in the event that we have recommendations, those will be put forward. So this is the proposal we put to you, hopefully will be agreeable to you. Back to you, Mr. President.
شكرا فيليبو. كرنواتي.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Considering that the specific needs of the members of regional association needs to be further addressed instead of the regional specific needs. So that's why we would like to suggest the request to the Secretary General in number 1. The sentence is written that to consider the task force proposals when reviewing the basic structure of the regional offices to respond to the regional specific needs. It is the original sentence there. And considering that we suggested, it is very important to address the specific needs of the members, not the regional specific needs. So that's why we suggest the sentence to respond to the regional specific needs to be to respond to the specific needs of the members and the region. So the difference is the members, not the region, but the members in the region. Thank you very much.
شكرا لك. شكرا. هل التغيير مقبول للجميع؟ هل يمكننا دكتور إلينا تفضلي.
Thank you so much. I need to separate regional needs because each region establish and prioritize regional needs according with the members, of course. At least we need to keep regional needs, including members' needs, not separate regional only for the members, in my opinion, because at the level of regional, we globalize all the region according with the members' needs.
إذا ممكن ندمج الكلمتين مع بعض. احتياجات الأعضاء بناء على كل إقليم. إذا
Okay.
Philippe, okay.
Thank you. I was going, your comment superseded mine, but adding the needs of the members in each of the regions probably would address it. In each of the regions. Correct.
حتى ننتهي من هذا البند، هل جميع موافق على التغييرات التي حصلت؟ اليابان
Thank you, Mr. President. So my concern is so individual members' needs is should be considered. So regional needs is so made after discussion the members among the regions. So I don't think so. The phrase of members is needed. I don't think so.
سيدنا
If I may, Mr. President.
Yes, تفضل.
Perhaps we could take the formulation proposed by Japan by saying to respond to regional specific needs, taking into account taking into account the needs of the members in the respective region.
I agree that.
Is that agreeable? Thank you.
إذا تم اعتماد مسودة التوصية 7-2-2-1 على 1، واعتماد الوثيقة 7-2-2. This is good, huh? Let's continue. خلينا نكمل معكم.
8-1.
Where's 8-1? I am in 8-2. Where is 8-1?
8-1 is budget.
Huh?
Budget.
Budget, but I don't have 8-1.
You're chair of the budget committee.
8-2.
8-2 I have.
8-4, maybe.
8-2. عفوا. إذن سنناقش الآن الوثيقة 8.1 الميزانية للفترة 2026 إلى 2027 والتي تتضمن مشروع قرار واحد. تمت مناقشة هذه الوثيقة في الجلسة 45 للجنة الاستشارية المالية 45 ثم في لجنة الميزانية المسودة الثالثة من الوثيقة 8.1 والتي تم تحديثها بناء على توصيات الجلسة 45 للجنة الاستشارية المالية متاحة على موقع المجلس التنفيذي. أدعو السيد رو سكالين رئيس لجنة الميزانية لتقديم تقرير شفهي عن عمل اللجنة. تفضل سيدي.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. In the first session here on Monday morning, we decided to establish a budget committee. The committee met here in this room on Monday at 1700. In this meeting, Brian Cover presented the proposed budget for 2026-2027, as well as the outcome of FINAC 45, which was held here at WMO Thursday and Friday last week. Following some questions from the members of the budget committee, the committee agreed with the approach proposed by FINAC 45 for the budget 2026-27. And Brian will now present the proposal and the related resolution. So over to you, Brian.
Thank you, Roar. So I've condensed the presentation quite a bit. So for those of you who are at FINEC and at the Budget Committee, you won't have to look through all of the slides again, but we'll have it at a summarized level. So if you can go, we'll talk through the summary of what was decided and a little bit of background information. So first, obviously, it's a bit of an unusual period. The context for the budget obviously starts with the strategic plan and the maximum expenditures as decided by Congress, because we're entering into the second biennium, but also takes into consideration the current financial situation and the evolving financial landscape that many of us are in right now. Next slide. So as a summary of what happened as respect to the budget, Secretary General published the proposed budget with a biennial budget amount of just over 138.7 million Swiss franc for the 2 years, which was fully in line with the maximum expenditures 24-27. This was reviewed by FINEC 45 and also considered the Secretary General's proposed approach to the budget approval process, which I will explain in a moment. And the FINEC recommended approval of the draft resolution 8.11, modified to reflect the proposed budget approval process and some specific comments related to the objects of expenditure. As Mr. Scullin mentioned, the Budget Committee then reviewed the updated resolution and concurred with the resolution and the proposed approach. Next. So as a summary, the proposed approach for the budget approval is first to approve the budget of 138.7 million for 26-27 at this EC. The importance there is it will allow for the assessment letters to be prepared and sent, and which really is required to support liquidity of the organization, to enable those assessment letters to reach members and for members to be able to plan their payments early for 2026. It also provides stability in the WMO Secretariat planning process while the strategic analysis continues. And it considers the possibility of some resolution of the uncertainties between now and when those documents will be prepared. Then the plan is to prepare a supplementary budget, which is foreseen in Financial Regulations 6.6 and 6.7, which would be considered at an extraordinary EC session on Friday of the Extraordinary Congress, as was discussed at the opening of the EC session. This would allow Congress to consider any proposed programmatic changes that come from the strategic review, which would then be followed by the EC consideration of the budget update based upon that work and modified for any decisions made by Congress related to potential reallocation of those budget amounts. Also, if there are any negative impacts of those uncertainties, that could be taken into consideration in the work and the supplementary budget. Next, please. So as a key component, the timeline, as we talked about, so we're here at the green dot EC 79. The strategic planning process that has been discussed is ongoing now, and we expect to have a full plan fleshed out in the mid-August time, and then allow us to present documents for consideration by Congress and EC in the late August, early mid-September timeframe, for then consideration by a FINAC immediately before Congress, which would be a virtual FINAC session sometime during that week before, and then an extraordinary Congress and extraordinary EC as discussed. Next. So just as a highlight, this shows the linkage between the maximum expenditures for 24 to 27 and the approved budget for 24 to 25, and the remainder, the 138.7 million, is the proposed budget for 26 to 2027, and this identifies that by long-term goal. Go ahead. So the draft resolution originally stated to adopt the regular budget for the biennium for the 138.7 million by appropriation part, and authorizes two elements. One, for the Secretary General to reappropriate any unspent balance that may arise from this financial period. However, one thing to note in this authorizes, which is different than in prior budgets for the second biennium, is we're saying subject to a sufficient level of payment of outstanding assessed contribution by members. The key element here being we want to make sure that the reappropriation is only happens and the Secretary General is authorized to spend only if we actually have that sufficient funding to make sure that we don't go beyond the liquidity that we have. That other than that modification, this is a standard clause that we have in the budget for the second biennium. And then to make transfers between appropriation parts as necessary in accordance with the financial regulations. Okay, and then the revision of the text between the further notes and the authorizes, and we'll pull this up in a moment. It additionally notes the currently evolving financial landscape and the strategic analysis on the prioritization and secretariat structure that is currently underway, and then requests 4 things of the Secretary General. The first 3 relate to this timing and process. So first is to prepare the document for Congress describing the results of the strategic analysis with emphasis on the impact of the implementation on the strategic plan. 2 is to organize this extraordinary session of the Executive Council with the purpose to consider and approve a supplementary budget, so sole purpose of that meeting. And 3, to prepare the supplementary budget as foreseen in the regulations for consideration by the EC session. The 4th relates to the request from FINAC regarding the objects of expenditure within the budget, and to ensure that there's sufficient quality of and resources for linguistic and conference services, and that due consideration is paid to the level of planned travel expenditures. So to make sure that there's quality linguistic and conference services and that controls are maintained and or strengthened over the travel expenditures. Okay, next. And that is all I have on this presentation. I think Laura wanted.
شكرا براين، شكرا. المجال مفتوح لأي ملاحظات أو إضافات، تفضلوا. إذا لا أرى أي ملاحظات. تفضل.
Thank you, Mr. President. So if there are no requests from for the floor from the members here, I would like, as the chair of the Budget Committee and also as a representative of EC to give a more general comment. So the proposal now presented by Brian gives us a way forward for the coming 2 years, even if we may have to make some difficult decisions in October. However, the financial challenges are not likely to go away. Many of us are in the same situation at home. Our budgets are in many cases not sufficient to cover the cost of our current activities, and at the same time, there is a pressure to include new activities. As members of WMO, we have an opportunity to build the WMO of the future as an organization that reflects our core mandate on weather, climate, and water. So how can we as members best be involved in this reflection? How do we ensure that the views within the organization and the members are aligned? And how can we ensure that the budget decisions, both on short-term and long-term, enable the sustainability of long-term core activities of WMO? If we set the priorities as we do through the strategic plan, how do we ensure that these are backed up with funding? I'm aware that there is now an internal review process ongoing to indicate opportunities for efficiencies, and that will hopefully help us in the short term. For the longer term, I do hope that we can have a process for the next strategy period where the WMO members can align priorities and funding so that we are better able to serve our core mandate in the future. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
شكرا لك. شكرا لك سيدي. إذا نعتمد مسودة مشروع القرار 811. ننتقل الآن إلى الوثيقة 8.2 جدول تقييم مساهمات الأعضاء لعامي 2026 و2027، والتي تتضمن مشروع قرار واحد. خلال الجلسة 45 للجنة الاستشارية المالية تم مناقشة هذه الوثيقة والتوصية ذات الصلة، وأوصت اللجنة باعتماد القرار دون تعديل. أود أن أدعو السيد براين كوفر لتقديم موجز حول جداول التقييم ومسودة مشروع القرار 8.2.1. تفضل براين.
Thank you. I'll do a very quick presentation here just for those who weren't at FINEC. Next slide, please. So first, what is the scale of assessment? The scale of assessment determines how the approved budget is divided amongst the members and how the annual assessment is derived. So the annual amount due is calculated as 50% of the approved biennial budget times each member's scale. So that's how you can determine, based upon the combination of the budget amount and the scale of assessment, how much each member is responsible for contributing for the budget. Next slide. So the basis for the scale of assessment is always the United Nations scale. And the proposed 2026-2027 scale is based upon the one that was published by the United Nations General Assembly in December of 2024. Based upon that, the scales were adjusted accordingly in accordance with the resolution of Congress, and ensuring that no member had an increase that exceeded 200% of its prior scale. And as I said, the scale is applicable to each member included, and that's in the annex to the document 8.2 as well. Okay, go ahead. So the draft resolution is to adjust the scales as shown in the annex and ensuring, based upon the United Nations, adjusted for differences in membership, ensuring that we keep a floor of 0.02% and that nobody goes above the 200%, which I can confirm was the case. And then there's to make provisional assessment in respect of non-members. So there is a group of non-members that could potentially join and what the scale of assessment for those would be. Next slide and last slide. And the FINAC recommendation, as stated, was that the Executive Council adopt the draft resolution without any modification. Thank you.
شكرا براين. الباب مفتوح لأي ملاحظات. إذن لا توجد أي ملاحظات، وبهذا نعتمد مسودة المشروع للقرار 821. ننتقل الآن إلى الوثيقة 8.4 استخدام الفائض النقدي من الفترة المالية 18، والتي تتضمن مشروع قرار واحد. تمت مناقشة الوثيقة خلال الجلسة 45 للجنة الاستشارية المالية، والتي أوصت باعتماد القرار دون تعديل. أدعو السيد براين لتقديم موجز حول الاستخدام المقترح للفائض النقدي من الفترة المالية 18. تفضل براين.
Thank you, Mr. President. And last short presentation for me of the day. So this is looking at the final cash surplus calculation for the prior financial period, 2020 to 2023. Next slide, please. So on the background on the cash surplus itself is defined in the financial regulations with Articles 9, 8, and 11. Congress 19 in Resolution 49 approved the suspension of the financial regulation that would require the distribution of cash surplus back to members, and delegated to the Executive Council this session, to allocate any cash surplus that may be generated. Resolution 2 of EC 77, the one immediately following Congress 19, requested the Secretary General to develop a proposal for the use of the cash surplus. Next. So based upon the facts in play for the 18th financial period and the final financial results, it started with a cash deficit of around 9.7 million. And based upon income and expenditures during the 18th financial period, there was actually a resulting cash surplus at the end of the 18th financial period, relatively small, 747,000. And so that's the amount that we are discussing now, and I will show you the proposed use of that cash surplus next. So based upon the financial situation of WMO, as we've all been discussing, and as a reminder, the underfunded status of the working capital fund, the working capital fund has a maximum amount of 7.5 million as the approved amount, but is only funded at 6.8 million. And it was expected and hoped that interest would cover that differential, which has not proven to be the case. And based upon also the authority given to the Executive Council, we are proposing that 700,000 of that cash surplus be transferred from the cash surplus to the working capital fund to fill up the working capital fund and give a little bit of more financial stability to the organization, with the small amount of 47,000 carried forward to the next financial period. Thank you. So the draft resolution is that the Executive Council would decide that that amount be transferred to the working capital fund to make up the current shortfall, and the remaining surplus of 47,000 be carried forward to the 47th financial period. There was discussion about that during FINAC, and then FINAC agreed that the Executive Council adopt the resolution without amendment. Okay. Thank you.
شكرا براين. المجال مفتوح لأي تعليق. إذن لا يوجد أي تعليق. بهذا نعتمد مسودة مشروع القرار 841. الآن ننتقل إلى البند الأخير، وهو البند السابع لهذا اليوم، وهو البند السابع في جدول أعمالنا: المسائل العامة والقانونية والسياسية والتنظيمية. في البند 7.2 الحوكمة الفعالة والمفتوحة والشفافة. سنبدأ بالبند 7.2.1 إجراءات الانتخابات والتعيينات. أولا أود أن أبلغكم أن الغرض من هذه الوثيقة هو تعزيز الحوكمة وتحسين وضوح الإجراءات ومواءمة عمليات الانتخاب والتعيين مع أفضل الممارسات واحتياجات المنظمة. لذا أدعو رئيس فريق العمل المعني بالانتخابات والتعيينات النائب الثالث للرئيس الدكتور مهاباترا إلى تقديم مسودة التوصية 7.2.1.1. تفضل لتقديم عرضه. تفضل دكتور مهاباترا. دكتور مهاباترا، هل تسمعنا؟ دكتور مهاباترا، تسمعنا؟ I think if we cannot, we do it. Maybe the chief of staff can use the view. دكتور مهاباترا، تسمعنا؟ He's connected. دكتور مهابترا تسمعنا؟
Check your Joseph, can she see that?
دكتور مهابترا
Really? Give to That's okay. Okay.
السيدة فانيسا تفضلي. لعلمكم لم نعتمد المسودة اليوم فقط للاطلاع للعرض والمناقشة، تبادل الآراء فقط. تفضلي فانيسا.
Good afternoon, everybody. Before you is agenda item 7.2.1, procedures for elections and appointments. These are the recommendations made by the task force on elections and appointments. Today, we'll just look at the comments that we have received from various members, as well as collect comments from the floor, after which we will discuss, and then we'll substantively look at the document on Friday. So if I can have document 7.2.1, please. So the task force sat and deliberated and made a number of recommendations. Among the recommendations they made to the task force is on procedures for appointment of the Secretary General. We have introducing the eligibility requirements for persons competing for the position of Secretary General under the amended provisions of Regulation 63, 143, and 150 of the General Regulations of WMO. These recommendations are contained in Annex 1 to Draft Recommendation 7.2.1. The task force also made a recommendation to introduce enhanced dialogue for candidates competing for the position of Secretary General. Under amended provisions of Regulation 150, the substantive text is included in Annex 2 of Draft Recommendation 7.2.1. The task force also is recommending rules of procedure for Congress in relation to enhanced dialogues with the position for Secretary General. This is contained in Annex 3 to Draft Recommendation 7.2.1. The task force is also introducing a recommendation to affirm a 2/3 majority for the election and appointment of the Secretary General under amended provisions of General Regulation 151. The substantive text is contained in Annex 4 to the draft recommendation 7.2.1/1. The task force is also recommending introducing rules that govern the transitional period between an outgoing Secretary General and a Secretary General elect. Through the amendment of Regulation 151, substantive text can be found under Annex 5 to draft recommendation 7.2.1. The task force is also recommending introduction of provisions that govern the manner by which staff members of the organization compete for the Secretary General position. This is through amending the staff regulations as well as the adoption of a standards of conduct for staff members competing for elected positions within WMO, can be found under Annex 6 and Annex 7 to draft recommendation 7.2.1. The task force is also recommending introducing provisions that govern the manner in which an incumbent Secretary General competes for the position of Secretary General. This can be found under Annex 8 to draft recommendation 7.2.1. And also recommending provisions that govern the manner in which officers of the organization compete for the position of Secretary General. The substantive text can be found under Annex 9 to draft recommendation 7.2.1. On the appointment of the Deputy Secretary General and Assistant Secretary General, the task force is recommending introducing a mandatory competitive selection process, as well as core competence/eligibility requirements for these two positions. The substantive text can be found in the annex to draft recommendation 7.2.1/2. On the procedures governing how the election process for members of EC is carried out, the task force is recommending introducing a single election process for the seats in the Executive Council. Substantive text for this recommendation can be found under Annex to Draft Recommendation 7.2.1/3. The task force is also recommending introducing procedures governing the use of electronic and proxy voting. For electronic voting, they're introducing recommendation that would streamline the process. The substantive text can be found in Annex 1 to Draft Recommendation 7.2.1/4. And on proxy voting, they're recommending the introduction of Regulation 64 to govern rules for proxy voting. This can be found in Annex 2 to Draft Recommendation 7.2.1/4. The task force is also recommending a policy to govern the election of the president and 3 vice presidents of WMO. This is a minor editorial change, as the substantive text can be found under Annex to Draft Recommendation 7.2.1/5. And last but not least, on the policy governing the role of hydrological advisors, the task force is recommending the current process to be maintained. So no changes in this particular section. So now we're going to invite the Executive Council to make comments and also look at the comments that the Secretariat has received from various members and to discuss the same. Thank you.
شكرا لك سيدة فينيسا. الآن المجال مفتوح لملاحظاتكم وتعليقاتكم، تفضلوا.
So I would suggest we go to Regulation 150, where we have the first comment. And I would invite then Chinda to present on the comment.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, de me donner la parole. Alors, sur cette règle-là, moi, j'ai fait une suggestion, celle de revoir les périodes qui ont été proposées. Donc, je soumets cette proposition-là à l'appréciation du comité exécutif. L'idée étant de faciliter un bon nombre de candidatures en essayant d'allouer assez de temps. Comme nous savons, ces candidatures-là, ça demande un peu plus de temps. Et pour ce qui est de l'expérience, c'est de ne pas trop alourdir, de ne pas faire du poste une affaire, j'ai envie de dire, des vieux. Puisque pour avoir jusqu'à 15 ans d'expérience, j'ai aussi pensé que nous voyons ailleurs même des chefs d'État qui sont très jeunes et qui parviennent à avoir des résultats positifs. Et ce matin, nous parlions des jeunes. Nous adoptions même des documents. Il faut essayer de tempérer. Au lieu de 15 ans à ce niveau-là, moi, je propose que l'expérience soit limitée à 10 ans. Et pour ce qui est des délais de soumission des candidatures, je propose que ce soit 1 mois au lieu de 3 mois. 3 mois, ça peut être lourd pour certains candidats qui ont besoin d'accomplir certains préalables dans leur pays, y compris les approbations, parfois à un très haut niveau, avant de soumettre les candidatures. Je vous remercie.
شكرا لك سيدي.
Thank you for that, and then thank you, Vanessa, for the presentation. And just to advise the council that Dr. Mohapatra is now connected. I would invite Abder to present on his comment, and then we can take any comments from the floor if there are any.
تفضل أبدا.
Thank you very much. I think just as a requirement for the post, apart from the technical requirements, I think the executive management requirement is a very, very important part of the consideration for this post. So that's why we've recommended that we also have that executive management component for any incumbents for this post. Thank you.
شكرا لك.
So I would
جنس،
suggest.
تفضل.
Sorry.
تفضل جنس.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dr. Johnson was a member of the Executive Council task team that was worked on the development and of these recommendations. So some of the comments I may make in relation to this agenda item are a little bit reflective of the discussion that happened within the task force, and also, of course, Dr. Johnson's perspective on any proposed amendments to the decisions that's been put in front of us. So in terms of the proposal for a 15-year timeframe for experience, there was considerable discussion in the task force around, the length of time that might be an appropriate length for the position of the Secretary General. And there was, I recall, some concurrence that 15 years is a similar timeframe in other UN bodies for a similar leveled experienced candidate for the Secretary General, and hence the proposed use of the 15-year timeframe. We are talking about the most senior appointment within the World Meteorological Organization, and experience is certainly a very strong requirement. And I think in that sense, Dr. Johnson feels that a 15-year timeframe is perhaps a reasonable reflection of the experience that we would expect of candidates seeking these positions. And in the terms of the timeframe for declaring of candidacy, the 3-month timeframe, Dr. Johnson feels is an appropriate length of time because it often allows time for candidates to then become known that they're a candidate for the position, and it just 1 month prior to the session of Congress where a vote might take place seems very close to actually declare your candidacy, and that members will need time to consider candidates, to discuss amongst their missions and elsewhere on candidates that are presented for the SG. So I think a 3-month timeframe would provide greater opportunity for members to really have a clear and thorough discussion and appreciation and opportunity to examine candidacies' credentials in a 3-month timeframe rather than 1 month. Thank you.
شكرا لك سيدتي. نعم بالفعل تم مناقشة الأمرين سابقا. دكتور مهاباترا، هل لديك شيئا تقوله؟
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. We have held various meetings and different sessions, and we have consulted the various processes followed by other UN bodies, and unanimously by all the experts in the election appointment task force, we have come up with this document, and we are open for any comments and suggestions. There are certain changes proposed, especially with respect to Secretary General under Regulation 150. I don't have any specific comments. Thank you.
شكرا لك سيد مهاباترا. جراهام، مستشار السيد جراهام، تفضل.
Thank you, Mr. President. As another member of the task force, I just wanted to align myself with the comments as presented by the alternate to Dr. Johnson. There was quite a bit of discussion around these points, and I think I couldn't articulate them better, so I'll just say I support those comments as presented.
شكرا لك سيدي. أرلين، تفضلي.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask a quick question with regard to the sentence before that says a Secretary General may. I'm not a legal person, but I just wanted to know if this was, if this is supposed to be may, or is there a stronger word? Because it is a limit of 2 terms. Thank you.
شكرا لك سيدتي. دكتور مهاباترا، سمعت السؤال؟
Yes, I could hear the question, and it was unanimously decided that their shall be 2 terms maximum for the Secretary General.
If I may, sir, I just noticed that he actually used the word shall. And that was the thing I wanted clarification on, if that's possible. Thank you very much.
شكرا لك.
So
Hisham,
do you
I think
suggest to replace, may I intervene, Mr. President, whether the advisor to Graham suggests to replace the word may by shall?
نعم ممكن. هشام، احنا تناقشنا سابقا بين شل ومير، صحيح؟
Yes, thank you,
تفضل
Chair.
قفص.
Chair, I think if we include the shall there, we completely change the meaning. In this instance, if we say shall, it's automatically that they serve 2 terms. So I would rather prefer a word instead of may, can. So there is the option that either the candidate may choose not to serve another term, or they may not be elected for another term. So shall in that instance would not work. It definitely not work. Thank you, Chair.
Arlene,
I just wanted clarity in terms of, I understood the maximum would be the 2 terms, but I was just looking for clarity with regard to if may was the correct word or if something else would be appropriate. I'm not a legal person. Thank you.
شكرا لك. بني.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I think in this case, we all understand the intent, which is that they may serve 1 term, but they must not serve more than 2. I'm a little concerned. It's a bit like when we were trying to edit the expert document yesterday, that all of us on the floor, I know Mr. Abada has legal background, but most of us on the floor are not lawyers. And so I would really look to the experts from the Secretariat to help us make sure that the document is catching the intent. And I understood that this was to take feedback now so that it could come back rather than try to edit the text, to take more general feedback so that the legal counsel can then reflect the text correctly, given that we don't have the legal support that we were obviously expecting to when we originally timetabled this session. So I just appreciate we take care about trying to make legal decisions in plenary because we're not competent.
شكرا لك. تفضل.
Well, given what Penny said, thank you, Mr. President. Given what Penny said, I don't know if I should continue, but I was just going to suggest that the Secretary General can or may, if re-elected, serve a 2nd term. Because the whole point of that 2nd term is up on the basis of being re-elected.
شكرا لك. Josephine.
Thank you. Thank you for all the comments, and thank you, Mr. President. I would suggest, because we have half an hour left, that we go through the introductions and we let those who have made comments present them. And then I feel certain that we will have to continue, so we can have a drafting committee meeting tomorrow evening to continue and go through all the proposed amendments, because we do now have half an hour. So it seems more practical for those who have presented comments to be able to explain them in the plenary, and then we can have the detailed conversation in the drafting committee tomorrow evening. That would be the proposal.
شكرا لك. ديفيد تفضل.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think I'm in agreement with what has been proposed in terms of the terms. There comes a time when you do not want to reinvent the wheel. If there are other organizations that have standard terms, we could as well use the terms that are globally accepted, so that we don't find ourselves spending a lot of time on arguments that could easily be solved elsewhere. On the issue of 3 months or 1 month, I think we could also look at what could be referred to as standard practice. And if we have the leeway to exercise this or alter this, maybe 2 months would be better than 3 months and also better than 1 month, so that you have, we meet somewhere in the middle, given that we are also proposing that the candidates be, if they are our employees, that they be on half salary, so that we don't subject them to unnecessary punishment just because they have shown interest in some post. Thank you, Mr. President.
شكرا لك سيدي. تفضل.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Merci de me redonner la parole. Après avoir écouté le comité qui a travaillé sur la question, je voulais expliquer davantage.
Getting Arabic on the English station.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, de me redonner la parole. Après avoir écouté le comité qui a travaillé sur le document, je voudrais expliquer davantage. D'abord, premièrement, je ne suis pas contre qu'on copie ce qui se fait ailleurs. Si c'est obligatoire, bon, on dit c'est obligatoire, c'est pas à discuter. Mais nous aussi, on peut innover. On pourra aussi, les autres pourront aussi copier à partir de ce que nous avons fait. C'est aussi important de regarder. Dans ma compréhension sur les questions d'expérience et le temps de soumission de candidature, il ne s'agit pas de dessiner le modèle robot de celui qui est déjà élu. C'est-à-dire que quelqu'un pourra avoir 30 ans d'expérience. Les États vont voter. Et juste donner la possibilité même à quelqu'un de se présenter et de se représenter. Si on demandait ici à quelqu'un, il faut sur fonction technique, il faut avoir 50 ans d'expérience, vous présentez une fois, vous n'avez pas la possibilité de vous présenter. Il faut donner la possibilité aux jeunes d'oser. Ils pourront revenir s'ils sont sanctionnés par les membres du fait qu'ils n'ont que 10 ans d'expérience. Ils pourront revenir, mais il ne faut pas visser les choses à la base. Sur la question du délai de soumission de candidature, c'est le même raisonnement que j'ai. Il s'agit d'un minimum. J'ai entendu que si quelqu'un soumet sa candidature juste 1 mois avant, c'est à ses risques et périls. S'il n'est pas connu, celui qui ne sera pas élu, quelqu'un pourra soumettre 6 mois avant. Quelqu'un peut même déclarer sa candidature maintenant. Il fait sa campagne comme il veut, mais rien ne doit l'empêcher de soumettre avant les 1 mois. 1 mois, c'est le minimum. Ça dit qu'au-delà de ça, on ne peut plus faire. Si tu veux être connu, tu soumets 3 mois. Ce n'est pas bloqué. Donc ça, c'était ma compréhension. Et je voulais terminer en disant que j'ai lu le travail, que je félicite. La dernière fois, nous étions au Congrès. On a décidé de réviser cette procédure parce qu'elle était difficilement applicable. J'ai vu, il y a des dispositions, par exemple, dedans, où on dit que un secrétaire général ne peut pas être remplacé par un ressortissant de la région. Pensons à des schémas où on va aboutir à un secrétaire général qui ne peut pas être remplacé par quelqu'un de sa région, mais c'est uniquement dans sa région où on trouve des gens qui ont 15 ans d'expérience. Je vous remercie.
شكرا لك سيدي شكرا.
Thank you. And as I said, I think we do need to continue maybe in a drafting committee so we can move and present all the modifications. But just some background since there's been a discussion on this, and the rationale that came up during the task force was that a WMO requires at least 15 years of experience for appointments to the position D1 and above. So the rationale was that Secretary General should have at least the same requirement that directors D1 and D2. And on the 6 months, 1 month, 3 months to refresh. And for those who were not in the task force, there were long discussions, and basically the 3 months, we arrived at the 3 months after considering the different aspects, basically special leave for staff members and how this would affect the different situations that arise due to the host country, Switzerland, and also a perceived unfair advantage towards external candidates due to the access to WMO resources by internal candidates over external candidates. So this was the discussion that went on in the task force. So I would suggest that we move to the next proposed amendment or the next proposal, which is in, I have to find it, 1 second. So we go to Annex 3 to draft recommendation 7.21. And we have here an editorial suggestion on procedure of or for. And I would request now on 3.1b if Abedar and Chinda want to present their suggestions.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, we also discussed a fair amount of what should happen during this procedure. And I thought it pertinent that a candidate not only introduce him or herself, but then also give us a sense of what their vision and priorities for the WMO would be. But because it's a very time-driven process, I thought that we should also then look at how much time we give them. I think maybe let me also address the next one, C, while I have the floor. The members of Congress also would be entitled to ask questions, but once again, we want to limit that, not in the sense of the question, but in terms of the timing. Otherwise, the process could get out of hand. The next amendment, in terms of the questions to be asked on a first come first served basis, I was a bit betwixt and between there, because the next line goes on to say that the modalities of the process for asking the question shall be determined by the president following nominations, etc. So I'm not sure what those modalities would be, but I did suggest that we could possibly have the questions asked on a first come first served basis, and once the decision is made how many questions will be allowed, then those questions would be, at least there would be a procedure for asking those questions, and those were the recommendations for consideration by the Executive Council. Thank you, Chair.
Shukran.
Thank you. Just to refresh, on the modalities, the discussion there was as to how the whole process for asking questions was going to be organized. And there was discussion as if questions needed to be submitted beforehand, if they could be presented directly during the plenary, etc. So that was the discussion on this issue. If I may, on the 5 minutes per candidate that is in B, the rationale for not including, and this was discussed in the task force, and the task force refrained from referencing a time limit, and this was to allow for the president to have flexibility in determining on a case-by-case basis, and this was dependent mainly on the time that was allotted for the election and the number of candidates, because one thing is to have 2 or 3 candidates and another thing is to have 10 candidates. So the time allotted for presentations, the rationale in the task force that was that the president needed to have some flexibility to accommodate the time with the number of candidates.
شكرا. تفضل توماس.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Justement, la proposition que j'ai faite d'avoir 5 minutes par candidat était dans le souci de l'équité. Maintenant, si on laisse la possibilité au président d'allouer le temps, il faut qu'il y ait une disposition qui l'oblige à allouer le même temps à tous les candidats. Auquel cas, dans ma compréhension, le président pourra décider de donner 10 minutes à la présentation d'un candidat et donner 5 minutes à un autre, peut-être parce que le temps est déjà épuisé. Dans l'alinéa D, j'ai effectivement laissé la faculté dans la proposition que j'ai faite au président d'allouer le temps à la réponse à la question. Le but étant qu'il ne faut pas qu'après, les candidats se jugent avoir été défavorisés. Et en ce moment-là, le président jugera en fonction de la longueur que la réponse à une question peut avoir pour allouer le temps de réponse. Parce que si on laisse aussi les candidats répondre, ils pourront prendre toute une journée pour répondre. Merci.
شكرا لك سيدي.
So I will continue. The next proposed changes are in Regulation 151. And here I do want to signal that this is original text. This is not, so these are editorial changes, but what we have there is the original text from Regulation 151, and task force did not make any changes. I don't know if Abader wants to make any comment.
No, it's purely editorial stuff. Thank you.
So we can go, I think there are other editorial in the same sense, and we can now move to 153. And here again, if you go up in the screen, I think 5. Okay, so this again, we are talking of the original text. And the task force did not make any comment on this.
بني تفضلي.
Thank you, Mr. President. And it was actually on the Annex 4 that I wanted to comment. I don't want to propose any different text at this point. I just wanted to flag that I can see the rationale for the 2/3 majority and knowing that a Secretary General comes in with strong support, but I can also see a possibility where a candidate, it becomes a preferred candidate with 50% of the vote, but can't secure the 2/3. And I wonder what the provision is in that case. And I'm saying this now because I think it will give the legal team a chance to respond rather than to make up text on the fly, particularly if we have a drafting committee. But that just is certainly a theoretical possibility. If people are entrenched in their positions, you could hit 50% and not be able to hit 66. Thank you.
شكرا سيدي. سيد Garvin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a question, actually. Excuse me. As we go through the procedure here, I was wondering whether, in fact, as it is right now, under the regulations, whether it's possible to make nominations from the floor for these positions, and how does that affect the procedures that we are describing here? Thanks.
شكرا.
Thank you for that question. And actually, the provisions that we were looking at before indicate that a candidate has to present its nomination at least 3 months in advance, or 1 month. It's the discussion that we're having. So that would change the rule of nominations from the floor.
شكرا. جوزفين. نكمل.
Yes. We continue. We have, if we move down in B, some new proposals from Chinda. If you want to explain, please.
Oui, merci de me donner la parole pour expliquer. J'ai voulu, pour ne pas laisser un peu de laxisme entre le secrétaire général sortant et l'entrant, qu'on essaye d'énoncer ce qu'on voit par décision majeure. Auquel cas, l'entrant sera interrogé sur toutes les décisions. Merci.
If I may, just a comment so that when we go into the drafting room, you take this into account. For this edition, we were looking at service provision contracts, and these are not approved within WMO by the Secretary General. So we are looking into what this modification or this proposal might imply to how administratively we organize service provision contracts internally. I think on C, what we have there is editorial. And we can move to Annex 6, to draft recommendation 7.2.1. Louise, do you want to? Explain, thanks.
Yeah, thank you. This is just to ensure and clarify that for any staff member that may be competing for the post of Secretary General, if they were to, when they declare their candidacy, The provision as it has been drafted is that they will automatically be placed on special leave. So the addition by Dr. Johnson was just to clarify that provision for special leave needed to be within the duration of their appointment. So as an example, if a candidate his contract was due to expire in 2 weeks and they declared their candidacy for Secretary General, that wouldn't mean their contract is extended for the period by which we are proposing that they take special leave. So it would just mean that there doesn't cause any confusion about their length of their contract. It needs to be within the boundaries of their contract.
شكرا.
So next we have in C, editorial changes.
List.
Yeah, it's just a very simple question. The business about being placed on leave. Obviously, that doesn't apply to the Secretary General who's in post as well. Okay, and that we don't have to have a provision that assures that, you know, if Celeste goes for a second term, she has to go on leave for the last 3 months once she's declared her thing. The other thing I wanted to mention as well, just very briefly, the new Regulation 149 that says about may serve 2 terms, that's been in there since 2011. It's not a new provision, it's just been lifted up. So I don't really think we need to talk about that because that's been there for 14 years. Thank you.
شكرا لك سيد. شكرا. Yes. I will finish now.
Yeah, thank you. So thank you for that comment. And there is a provision regarding Secretary General to ensure continuity, it is there, I assure you. Yeah. So if we go to Annex 7, I think this is again editorial from Avatar. And here then in 2.1, we again have the same proposal of changing 3 to 1 month. And this, as it was for Secretary General, is the same proposal, but for President. Okay, if we move down, we have there 3.8, a proposal by Chinda. I would request if you want to take the floor to explain.
Oui.
Thank you.
Merci de me donner la parole. Pour ce qui est des critères qui ont été énoncés là globalement, j'ai trouvé que certains étaient répétitifs. Pour prendre le cas de celui-là, moi je trouve que le 3.7, il est suffisamment clair. Et pour moi, répéter un certain nombre de critères comme ça avec beaucoup de redondance donnerait plutôt l'impression qu'on bloque cet exercice-là. Une fois que c'est clair, c'est suffisant. Lorsqu'on dit que le personnel doit faire la différence entre l'activité de travail et son activité de campagne, c'est suffisamment clair. On n'a pas besoin de lui dire que ça concerne les missions, ça concerne utiliser le matériel du travail. Donc, c'est pour ça que j'ai proposé la suppression d'un certain nombre de critères que je trouvais déjà assez clairs. Merci.
We have then following 2 similar suggestions to delete proposals that the task force have made. I don't know if you want to also explain in 4.3 and 4.4.
Bon, je
Andrew?
pense que j'ai donné l'explication que j'ai donnée là, ça tient pour tous les autres. Hein. Vous n'avez qu'à lire les critères qui sont avant ou après. Ils sont suffisamment clairs pour qu'on puisse être encore en train de répéter. Et le tout tourne autour de la séparation entre l'activité de travail et l'activité de campagne. Merci.
إذن لضيق الوقت نتوقف هنا، وعلى الأمانة العامة تسجيل جميع الملاحظات، ونستكمل غدا صباحا.
Put up a moment the program for tomorrow so people know. Can I say a few words?
Because we don't have time.
May I ask the colleagues to put up a moment the tentative work plan for tomorrow? It's just to give you an anticipation of the day. The first thing in the morning, of course, as you know, is the IMO Prize Award ceremony and the lecture. So this is estimated to have a duration of 1 hour, so from 9 to 10. And that would follow by the voting about the next prize. So it's is an in-camera session. We cannot so precisely estimate the duration. We have calculated approximate time of 1 hour, but of course that will depend on the voting. And after that, of course, there will be the announcements for the voting. So depending on the time, we may be able to continue already in the morning this item. So the presentations will continue towards the end of the morning. In the afternoon, we have finance, oversight, and human resources. There are items there that there are the financial statements, the consideration of oversights report and the HR reports, where we will have external speakers. So these items are blocked for the afternoon because of intervening speakers from also different time zones. So also there, depending on the situation, there may be these presentations on this particular item of today can also continue. And as the Chief of Staff has anticipated, there may be a possibility also for a drafting team to address some of the items in elections and appointment that have not been resolved, or they have alternative proposals. At the same time, Friday morning can indeed be devoted to the actual adoption of the document. So that's Friday morning, together with the report of the Committee on Membership. It is not possible to adopt the decision on membership until the committee has concluded their work tomorrow. So there'll be a report and a decision, leaving any outstanding matter, and then the review of previous resolutions, the agenda of the next Congress, and also the dates for the next sessions for after these items. So this is the anticipated plan for the next 2 days, depending on how long some of the items will take. Thank you, Mr. President.
شكرا ستيفانو. الآن أترك الأمر لراعي الجلسة لأي إعلانات. تفضل.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just one announcement to remind people of the trilateral reception hosted by the UK, France, and Germany at 1900 at Belle du Lac, a restaurant. Thank you. Wish everybody a very good evening.